Good morning, great Americans. It's another great American video from the bunker in Kentucky. Well, this is not a religious video. However, I am going to make a couple of biblical references because I think they are very interesting. And no, I'm not going to make any end times, these are the end times types of references. I don't really go in for that kind of stuff. But I am going to make a couple of interesting biblical references. And here it is. Um, 40 years in the Bible oftentimes represents a generation, right? So after the Hebrews sinned at the foot of Mount Sinai, they were forced to wander in the desert for 40 years to get rid of the bad generation and then let the next generation go into the promised land, right? So they wandered for 40 years to get rid of a generation. So 40 years very often refers to a generation. Now, I was thinking about the fact of, you know, 40 years ago, in America, what was going on? Well, it was 1986, the middle of the great 80s, right? And Ronald Reagan, the great president, Ronald Reagan was president. We had the wonderful Pope, John Paul II was Pope. The Iron Lady, Margaret Thatcher, was the Prime Minister of Great Britain. And together they formed I mean, they were just beloved by people. And they were the serious Cold War team. These two, these three did many, many, many great things, but probably chief among them was the fact that they were a team fighting against communism, against global communism during the height of the Cold War. So, which we won. So I find it ironic and sad, a little despicable, that 40 years later, our nation, which was just doing great. I mean, the 80s were just great from everything from great music and great movies to patriotism, and freedom was on the march, and the wonderful Ronald Reagan it was morning in America again. If you remember the political ad, once again it was morning in America, and America was growing. We Under Ronald Reagan, we had the greatest post World War II economic boom ever at that time. And then of course the wonderful John Paul II was the first non-Italian pope, and he came from Poland, which at that time was occupied by the communists. And but the point is, America was just doing great. People were in a great mood, and frankly, racism was just about wiped out. In the 80s, who can forget that America's favorite dad was Dr. Huxtable, right? Bill Cosby. And Michael Jackson was the king of pop. And the racial tensions, although there's always a racial tension, but they were being healed. And America was growing, and we were fighting communism, and we beat the communism. That was the America 40 years ago. What has happened in a biblical generation, 40 years now? What do we have? Well, fortunately, we have a good president back in. It wasn't too long ago, a couple of years ago, we had a horrible president who kissed the ass of the socialists and the former communists and the communists inside the Democrat Party. But today, we have literal communists running for office, sometimes winning office, like Mamdani in New York. But the real frightening thing of all is that between the corrupt left-wing media and the corrupt universities where all professors are communists and leftists, we have a generation now that literally embraces Marxism, socialism, and to a certain extent communism, and it's actually become a dangerous situation. Now, it's been in the news for a few decades how kids on college campuses are preferring socialism uh, to capitalism, but apparently nobody really took the stories too seriously, and now it has the communist baby, the communist baby that has been gestating inside the Democrat Party for these many years has now been born, and it's out running for office. And whereas in the Bible, the wicked generation died out and the good generation was allowed to come to the promised land. In America, the opposite has happened. The good generation is gone, and we are now in a wicked generation. And that's a fact. If you embrace socialism and you embrace communism, I mean, you're just a fool. And you might as well embrace fascism and Hitler because it's all just as evil. It's all government control of your life, of industry, and authoritarianism, where you are forced to say things. You can get in trouble for saying the wrong things. It's all the same. It's all the same. And so it's a horrible situation we find ourselves in. And of course, all along the way, they have been aided and abetted by a corrupt fake news media. You know, when when Donald Trump referred to CNN and others as fake news, it was sort of a little funny, a little humorous, but at the same time, it was deadly serious. We now have a huge portion of the nation who would rather vote for Democrats and communists than Republicans. And the only reason they feel that way is because they have been brainwashed. So they've been brainwashed in colleges, and their brainwashing continues to be reaffirmed by fake news. And their brainwashing is so complete that they won't even tune in to real news sources. It's quite an amazing. It's a scary, dangerous, but at the same time, it's jaw-droppingly amazing how left-wing propaganda has so thoroughly corrupted the United States that there are, I don't know, 30 to 40% of Americans who have been brainwashed into leftism, socialism, and their brainwashing prevents them from watching real news like Fox News or Breitbart or Newsmax or OAN or whatever, and they prefer to listen to pure leftist propaganda, which continues to reaffirm the false information. I mean, who would have ever thought we would see the day when mobs and mobs and mobs of idiots and utter fools would be in the streets attacking law enforcement, by which I mean ICE, attacking law enforcement who are trying to deport people who are in the country illegally. Now, let me repeat that. Law enforcement who are doing their jobs by deporting people who are here illegally, and there are mobs and mobs and mobs of America attacking the law enforcement and defending the criminals. Who would have thought that you would ever see a day like that? And 40 years ago, it would have been unthinkable. Absolutely unthinkable. 40 years ago, there was no such thing as transgenderism and changing your pronouns what do you call uh, gender affirming surgery on little kids. Um, it just absolutely astounding. So that's 40 years. So what wickedness? So that's really the gist of this video is just the amazing irony and the a little bit of a sort of analogous uh, uh, sort of situation of 40 years biblically being a generation. And look where we have come from 40 years ago, 1986, when you see these people behind me, the great, wonderful people who fought against the socialists and the communists, who liberated nations, and America was on its ascendancy, to today, you have mobs of Democrat just scum in the streets attacking law enforcement, wanting to defund law enforcement, protecting uh, protecting criminal illegal aliens, and then also defending all manner of evil that the Democrats promote. And I've made plenty of videos about that, about the evil policies of Democrats. Again, based on whether you're a Christian, whether you're Jewish, or even if you're Muslim, which by the way raises an interesting point. The Democrat Party, the evil policies that it promotes from a religious point of view, the murder of children by abortion, sodomy by way of gay marriage, this transgenderism, sexual deviancy, all kinds of stuff. All that stuff is actually just as sinful in Islam as it is in um, Christianity and Judaism. And it makes you wonder why you would think one would think that Muslims in America would be on the side of conservatives and Republicans because they don't want their kids subjected to that filth, right? And they want to have like good economy and good jobs to have, like anybody else, right? Why does it seem like so many radical Muslims are aligned with Democrats and the left, which are actually their ideological enemies? It's an interesting question. Why would two totally different groups, right? You got Muslims over here, which are very, you know, uh, and then on the left, you've got Democrats who are just sick sexual degenerates, pink-haired, purple-haired freaks, homosexuals, transgenders, and all that stuff running around on one side, and they are aligned with Muslims who are the exact opposite. They'll put homosexuals to death in a Muslim country. You're not going to be a transgender, and you're not going to a gay bar, and you're not going to have a gay wedding in Iran or Saudi Arabia or Syria or any of those places. Certainly not in Gaza, right? I love it. You got to love how all the left wing freaks support Gaza, but if they move to Gaza, they'd be put to death, right? So it's a strange alliance. It's something to ponder. I mean, you'd have to figure the only reason that people like that align themselves with each other is that they have to have one thing in common, right? So, what would be the one thing in common between Muslims and the left wing freaks and sick sexual degenerates? What would be that one thing? Well, it's something to think about. Anyway, I digress. So that's the video for today, is the amazing analogy and very sad and very dangerous to America's future. is how in 40 years, a biblical generation, we went from what you see behind me here, fighting against communism, fighting for America, fighting for liberty, to now we have communists actually running uh, for office, winning office, and the majority of American youngsters, young people, actually embracing socialism over uh, over capitalism, and frankly hating America. You pull a lot of, I mean, you see all these videos and everything on YouTube where they interview these youngsters and stuff, and even some old people too, stupid old idiots. They just say, "Oh, we hate America. America's the worst country ever." This is just so fucking stupid. You have to be truly, and I can't think of a better word, unfortunately. Saying someone is stupid, sounds like such a low level insult, but I really can't think of another word. You have to be so fucking stupid to hate America and say America is the worst place ever, when in fact, America is the greatest nation ever to exist in the history of mankind, and a nation inspired by God. And yeah, I'm going to get religious on that one. A nation inspired by God. And here's what I mean by that. In the 1776, in the 1700s, you had a world, an entire world, that was ruled by kings and queens, emperors, potentates, all kinds of dictators and rulers. And in that world came forth the founding fathers of America, inspired by God, who decided to pledge their lives and their fortunes to a grand experiment, a nation of free men who can vote for their leaders, whose leaders are their servants, not their rulers, where everyone has equal rights and guaranteed rights, protected by government, where it is understood that your rights and come from God, not from man, that it is self-evident that we are all created equal, and that we all have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that these rights come from God, and that the job of government is to protect your God-given rights. That was a radical, radical idea in the world of the 1700s. And it was inspired by God, no doubt. And that became the United States of America, which God blessed and allowed to grow into the most powerful, wealthiest superpower in the history of man, which has achieved things that no one could ever have dreamed of, from landing on the moon and exploring the stars, to spreading freedom and liberty around the world, defeating empires, defeating Nazi Germany, defeating Imperial Japan, empires that wanted to plunge the world into darkness. We liberated the world from America, brought an end to slavery. Slavery in the 1700s was the norm around the world. It went under different names. It had slightly different styles and slightly different, from country to country. It was a little bit different, but it was the norm around the world, and always had been from the days of the Roman Empire, even before the pharaohs. I mentioned, uh, speaking of the Bible, the Hebrews were slaves under the pharaohs, right? People were slaves under the Roman Empire. Slavery was the norm. And this great God-inspired nation, the grand experiment in liberty and freedom, was the country that ended slavery. So, so America is the greatest nation, and right now, Democrats and the idiots and fools who embrace socialism, Marxism, and the left are throwing it all away. Are you going to allow are you going to allow America, the greatest nation ever to exist, are you going to allow it to just disappear and become a blip on the radar of human history? A country that maybe, 1,000 years from now, nobody will even remember. Are we going to allow that to happen and allow the world to plunge back into darkness, totalitarianism? Because that's what the Democrats want to do. Right now, we are in dangerous times. The only thing I can tell you is that if you are a supporter of Trump in this upcoming election and in the presidential election, you have to get out and do everything you can possibly do to get Republicans elected and a Republican president elected in 2028. If you are not a Trump supporter, if you're a Democrat, I ask you to seriously think twice about that. Put your country ahead of party, because the party of John F. Kennedy and Harry Truman, uh, it doesn't exist anymore. It is gone. That's why all the good Democrats have left the Democrat Party, and the only people that are left are the sick, degenerate socialists and Marxists and flat out idiots like AOC and Ilhan Omar and Rashid and Hakeem Jeffries and all these fools and idiots and anti-Americans who hate America and want to plunge America back into, along with the rest of the world, into authoritarianism and dark, dark times. Do not vote Democrat. Place your country ahead of party. Do not allow this generation to die out after 40 years. That's the message for today. Thank you very much. Please share this video. Please subscribe to our Substack page for free. And I will see you in the next great American video. Adios, muchachos.